The moment the shrill ringtone pierced the early morning calm, everyone in Maplewood Estates knew something had gone catastrophically wrong. Neighbors peeked from behind lace curtains, speculating that HOA Karen had once again rigged her power trip to impose her will. In a cruel twist of fate, however, when she slammed her Chanel-clad hand onto the chunky red button of her antique landline, she unwittingly summoned the son of the county sheriff, a man whose moral compass was forged in steel and justice. As the click of the call connected, Karen's smug certainty dissolved into a swirl of vanity and dread because the familiar drawl that greeted her was not the distant dispatcher she had expected but a low, firm voice that said, "Deputy Banks here. You called me." Seconds later, reality crashed in. This was no routine HOA complaint. This was a reckoning. At first, Karen spun a tangled web of petty grievances. Her neighbors' recycling bins were an eyesore, the grass had been trespassed upon by errant pets, and the communal mailbox was not aligned to her exacting standards. Each accusation dripped from her lips like venom, designed to cow anyone who dared oppose her reign. But the deputy listened with an uncanny calm that mirrored the cool confidence of a man used to facing down true criminals. The truth bled through the seams of her fabricated story when she demanded an immediate in-person meeting in the clubhouse at noon, insisting the entire board attend or face fines. Deputy Banks, bound by protocol but harboring a fierce sense of right, agreed to observe the meeting to ensure no civil rights were trampled, and that's when her facade began to crack. Karen's allies on the board shifted uncomfortably as he warned them that intimidation tactics and misuse of emergency services carried real legal consequences. Her face, once a mask of self-righteous smugness, twisted in silent panic. But Karen refused to back down. She strode into the community center at the appointed hour, her rhinestone-embellished mask of confidence firmly in place, prepared to command obedience. The room fell silent at her entrance, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows on her emerald-studded blazer. With a sweeping hand, she ordered the HOS secretary to present the agenda, her voice echoing off the faux marble walls. At that precise moment, Deputy Banks stepped forward, his polished badge catching the glare, and asked to address the board. Karen's lips curled into a mocking smile as she motioned him to speak. He laid out the fundamental rights of every homeowner, cited the statutes against frivolous 911 calls, and reminded them that abuse of power even in a gated community was punishable by law. The hush deepened as Karen tried to interject, but all she produced was a quavering protest that revealed how off-balance she truly was. Then, like a bolt of lightning ripping through a storm cloud, the hidden truth emerged. The HOA treasurer, an unlikely ally of Karen's who had sat silently throughout her tirade, rose with trembling hands and confessed that Karen had coerced him into signing off on phantom fines and unauthorized security upgrades, redirecting the excess funds into her private account. The room erupted in stunned gasps as he revealed proof bank statements, screenshots of clandestine group messages, and an audio recording of Karen boasting about her plan to leverage fear for personal gain. Karen's breath caught in her throat, the veneer of control shattered as each damning detail washed over her. She spun toward the treasurer, her cheeks flushed crimson, but no words came, only the frantic flutter of lashes and the widening of her eyes that spoke of a predator caught in headlights. In that electrified instant, the board members exchanged glances of outrage and betrayal. They realized they had empowered a tyrant who cloaked her greed in civic duty. The deputy stepped forward again, his voice steady but carrying an undercurrent of steel. He informed Karen that she was now under investigation for embezzlement, misuse of emergency services, and harassment charges that could see her expelled from the community and facing criminal prosecution. The crushing weight of the public unraveling bore down on her. She sank into the nearest chair, her polished stilettos scraping against the tiled floor as she stared at the pile of evidence. Her carefully constructed empire of fear lay in ruins before her, exposed to the unforgiving light of accountability. But the story did not end with her collapse. In the aftermath, Maplewood Estates underwent a renaissance of trust and transparency. The new HOA board, comprised of neighbors who had once lived in fear, passed sweeping reforms to ensure checks and balances, instituted anonymous reporting mechanisms, and donated the recovered funds to a local veterans charity, inspired by Deputy Banks's own service record. Karen's downfall became a cautionary tale across the county, a reminder that power unmoored from integrity is a fragile and dangerous thing. The deputy, whose career was defined by upholding the law with compassion, received a commendation for his restraint and courage. The treasurer, having atoned for his complicity, found a renewed sense of purpose in community outreach. And the residents, once silenced by fear, reclaimed their voices, vowing never to let tyranny creep through their hedges again. In the final scene, the community gathered for a block party on the freshly paved Main Street, laughter echoing under lantern-lit trees. A banner stretched across the entrance proclaimed, "Welcome back to Maplewood," its vibrant colors symbolizing hope reborn. A little girl skipped by, clutching a flyer that summarized the ordeal in bold letters. "Justice served, community united." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Deputy Banks watched from a distance, satisfied that the truth had prevailed. A voice called his name. It was the treasurer, offering him a plate of barbecue and a grateful smile. He nodded, eyes misting, and said, "We did it together." The treasurer replied, "You taught us that standing up to injustice is the greatest act of service." In that shared moment, the scars of betrayal felt a little less raw. The weeks that followed felt surreal, as if Maplewood Estates had been ripped from a nightmare and stitched back together with equal parts relief and lingering tension. The courthouse steps became Karen's new stomping ground. Only now the spectators were not neighbors trembling behind hedges, but reporters with cameras and microphones, hungry for every humiliating detail of her fall from grace. She arrived each morning in tailored suits, once symbols of her authority, now armor against public scorn, but the confident stride had vanished, replaced by a hesitant shuffle, as if each step reminded her that the world had turned its back. Inside, Deputy Banks sat quietly in the gallery, watching her shuffle through evidence tables heavy with invoices, email chains, and bank statements that mapped her elaborate web of deceit with inescapable clarity. He had testified once, recounting how a simple prank call had unlocked this Pandora's box, and every time his steady baritone echoed through the courtroom, it underscored the moral gravity of abusing trust for personal gain. Outside, the community organized solidarity gatherings, not to cheer her downfall but to support each other through the shock. Barbecue smoke curled around picnic tables where residents, once strangers behind fenced yards, shared stories of how Karen's reign had stifled their voices, and how liberating it felt to speak freely again. Children darted between lawn games, their laughter a defiant soundtrack to the memory of fear that had once gripped this neighborhood. In the glare of public opinion, Karen attempted a defense rooted in self-pity. She claimed her actions sprang from a desire to maintain standards and protect property values, painting herself as a scapegoat for a board that had willingly followed her lead. But during cross-examination, the treasurer's voice quavered no longer. He had found courage in the truth and spoke of Karen's threats, the late-night pressure calls, and the clandestine meetings where she instructed him to forge signatures. Each revelation fractured her narrative, and the jurors, once anonymous faces behind a wooden rail, began to lean forward, their expressions shifting from polite interest to solemn disapproval. The prosecution presented a timeline of call logs and financial transfers, stitching together a story of premeditation that left no room for doubt. Karen's eyes, previously so sharp and attacking, filled with tears the moment the judge read the count of charges. 3 counts of fraud, 4 counts of misuse of emergency services, and a host of misdemeanor harassment violations. It was a moment of reckoning she could neither spin nor evade. As the verdict loomed, Maplewood Estates braced itself for closure. A memorial plaque was installed by the clubhouse entrance, not to honor Karen but to commemorate the community's resilience. Engraved with the words "Truth prevails when we stand together," it served as a daily reminder that solidarity and courage could topple even the most formidable adversary. Deputy Banks attended the private dedication, his presence a bridge between law enforcement and citizens, proof that justice is most powerful when tempered with compassion. He addressed the small gathering, his voice steady as he praised the residents for refusing to be cowed by intimidation. He acknowledged the treasurer's bravery and invited anyone still shaken by the ordeal to reach out, promising that authority was not an instrument of fear, but a shield for the vulnerable. Then came the sentencing. On a crisp autumn morning, the courtroom brimmed with tension. Karen, clad in muted tones that matched her subdued demeanor, stood as the judge pronounced her sentence. Community service working with local youth programs, restitution payments to repair the HOA scholarship fund, and a suspended jail term contingent on her maintaining good behavior. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some expected harsher punishment, others believed she had suffered enough. Deputy Banks, His face inscrutable, said nothing. But as the bailiff led Karen away, her shoulders slumped under the weight of her disgrace. Residents exchanged looks of conflicted relief. Justice had been served, yet a part of them hoped this outcome would foster genuine remorse rather than embittered resentment. In the weeks after, Karen vanished from public life. Rumors swirled that she had moved in with an out-of-state relative, that she was attending therapy, that she was planning an appeal. But the truth was simpler. Stripped of her authority and shunned by former allies, she could no longer command the narrative. Her Instagram account went silent, her designer outfits gathered dust in an abandoned closet, and her once prized garden became overgrown, a silent testament to the fleeting nature of control built on coercion. Meanwhile, Maplewood Estates flourished. The new board, elected in a transparent vote, prioritized community input over edicts, hosting monthly forums and rotating leadership roles so no single voice could dominate. They revived the annual summer picnic, where neighbors mingled among string lights and potluck tables, sharing recipes and laughter instead of whispered complaints. One crisp evening, as leaves swirled around the freshly repainted curb numbers, Deputy Banks made a rare appearance at the community garden, where he helped plant winter bulbs alongside residents. Children toddled around, examining worms and learning the value of nurturing something small into bloom, an apt metaphor for a neighborhood that had rebuilt itself from fear into fellowship. He bent to place a tulip bulb beside Maria, the HOA secretary who had once trembled under Karen's glare. She smiled at him, gratitude shining in her eyes, and said, "You taught me that standing up for what's right means sometimes facing down those we once trusted." He nodded, careful not to steal her spotlight, and replied, "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about restoring hope." Together they covered the bulb with soil, sealing a promise that the darkest season could still yield the brightest spring. Yet beneath the restoration lay a cautionary undercurrent. The memory of how easily power could corrupt, how a single person's ambition could poison an entire community. To guard against drift back into complacency, the board instituted a Truth and Transparency Festival each year, inviting speakers on ethics, hosting workshops on civic engagement, and reenacting the story of Karen's downfall through a community play, an artistic reminder that vigilance must be as perennial as the grass. Volunteers built a small amphitheater in the Central Park, where lanterns glowed each autumn night as neighbors gathered to share stories of integrity, empathy, and the quiet heroism of everyday courage. In a final twist, long after Karen's name had faded from cafe chatter and social media feeds, a young journalist from a regional magazine approached Deputy Banks with a question. "Will you ever truly forgive her?" He paused, scanning the cheerful crowd around him, the children playing tag among the lantern-lit paths, the elders reclining on benches exchanging memories of hardship overcome. He thought of justice measured not just in retribution but in renewal. Then he answered, "Forgiveness isn't a gift to her, it's a gift to ourselves. We move forward not by holding on to anger, but by planting seeds of trust. And when those seeds bloom, we know we've won far more than any verdict could deliver." As the festival lights danced on the faces of those gathered, it was clear that Maplewood Estates would never be the same, and thanks to the unintended heroism sparked by a single phone call, it would be infinitely better.